So, to begin with, I wanted to ask a couple of questions around stop and search. Now, when we were speaking with community members, this is a topic that came up quite regularly, just around what are rights around stop and search. So, I think just to begin with, what actually is a stop and search? Why do the police stop and search people?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite a hot topic, because it is something that unfortunately certain members of the public are subject to more than others, and it's particularly important for people to know their rights and what they're dealing with. So members of the traveller, Romany, Gypsy community, it's really important to know what this actually means. So a stop and search is kind of what it says on the tin. Effectively, the police have the right to stop someone on the street in a public place, and search them for the purposes of trying to find possibly weapons, or some sort of legal item. They can also what's known as detain someone for a search. So they can keep you and hold you for it. So you don't necessarily have a right then to walk away because you're being detained. If you're not sure, you can always ask the police questions. So there are also something known as a stop and account. So sometimes the police might try and stop someone and just ask them a few questions, and they're not actually trying to search that person. And that's slightly different. But unfortunately, if it's maybe some of your first interactions with the police, you're not going to understand what's going on. Is it a stop and account or a stop and a search? So always ask questions if you're not sure. You can ask, am I being detained? That's quite a key question. And as I've said, the stop and search is largely has to take place in public. So if you were in your house, they can't stop and search you in your house because you're in what's known as a dwelling property, or for example in a garden, unless the police have some kind of reason to believe that you're that's not your property, or you don't have permission to be on that property, for example. The police have to have reasonable grounds for suspecting that they will find like a stolen item on you, or possible weapons, knives, things like that. So they can't just stop you for no reason, or based on personal factors. So just because that you're from the traveller community, that alone is absolutely not a reason to be stopping you. It may be that there's been a description circulated of someone that's committed an offence, and they can say, well, you match the description. That's slightly different, but they cannot be stopping someone simply for the fact they think that they're a traveller or a gypsy. That is discrimination, and that's not right. As we've said, we've got solicitors that deal with those sorts of things, that we can assist you with if necessary. So the reason why they're stopping you needs to be based on information, facts, intelligence, not based on what you look like.
Are all really, really good points from Gislaine there. It's you don't always know what you don't know. So there might be certain bits of information that you just don't know to ask, such as why are you stopping and searching me? Whether they can stop and search you in your home, in your garden, does that matter? What if you're in another person's home? So I think it's just doing your research. It never harms to be more informed on these topics. I don't know if you'd agree, Olivia.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it is really good that she just raised there, it's to ask that question, am I being detained? Is, just being able to kind of know to ask those questions, because I wouldn't have known to ask that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure Gislaine will touch a little bit on this later. But just about asking questions in a really respectful way always. You're more than within your rights to ask questions around what's happening to you, but it's just going to make the process much more smooth and much more likely for the police and yourself to be able to cooperate in a respectful manner. If you're asking questions in that respectful way, I think remaining calm is really, really important. Kind of mentioned how it's really important that you know your rights to ask these questions, but also would you agree to do it in a really respectful manner, and try and
Absolutely.
remain as calm as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of kind of our biggest words of advice. It's very natural to feel a bit defensive if an officer approaches you and is asking you and stopping you questions when you know you feel in your rights. Why are you being stopped? Why is this happening? But unfortunately, they are the police. So if you do get a little bit aggressive, or if you're coming across in a certain way that isn't necessarily respectful or compliant, they will then try to use that against you later. If it was to go to court, they'll write in their police station, in their witness statements, to say this person wasn't being compliant, they weren't being helpful, they were being aggressive, and they'll try to then paint a picture of you that isn't good and isn't necessarily reflecting of you as you are. But unfortunately, then that's something the court sees. Police also should be wearing body worn cameras as well, so it's likely all to be videoed. It should be videoed. So that's something to take into account as well. So yeah, absolutely, you're in your right to ask questions.